That's right. You're listening to another episode of the Co-Main Event Mixed Martial Arts Podcast. I'm Chad Dundas. That's Ben Folks. We're both longtime MMA journalists, and for the last 13 years, we've been meeting here every week to break down all the action in the wild, weird, and occasionally wonderful world of mixed martial arts. Ben, this is probably the last episode of the CME proper of 2025. We'll have a full week of Patreon content this week, and then sometime in the dead zone around Christmas and New Year's, we'll drop our annual CMEs award show, our yearly award show. The
Seamies.
CMEs, always one of the most highly trafficked episodes of the year. But just the way the production schedule works out for the days this year, it'll be hard to try to do much during that holiday time unless we get like really, really bored. So I think we might do a little bit of 2025 look back this week on this episode. We got some listener mail that we want to get to. Stuff happening, even though there aren't any fights booked for a few weeks. I wanted to, I guess, first of all, get into what I am colloquially describing as this Ilya Topuria bullshit.
Okay.
And what is going on with him? We found out, obviously, a couple weeks ago he was stepping away from the sport, at least in the interim, in the near term. We're going to have this interim lightweight championship fight between Justin Gaethje and Patrick Pimblett. And now we get some more information. This week he released a fairly lengthy statement essentially saying he's being extorted, claiming that he's being extorted for false claims of domestic abuse, and that he's not going to fight the first quarter of the year, trying to deal with this personal stuff that he's got going on. So he is out for that period. And then at the same time, you got these other interviews of him floating around where unrelated. He's kind of saying, yeah, probably not in MMA for the long term, because I'd really like to try my hand at boxing, maybe make some real money. So stop the presses.
Yeah.
Big time MMA star flirts with getting into boxing.
You know, it always goes one direction. It never goes the other direction. That should tell us something. And it's that the something it should tell us, Chad, is probably not that boxing desperately needs to be fixed by TKO Group Holdings LLC. I don't know if that's the lesson. But the Ilya Topuria stuff and how it's going to factor into what was seeming like on the path to being a historic run as a UFC champion, that is concerning. Just because right now we're looking at this interim title bout, neither one of which features a number one contender on either side. So we're doing that. We kind of had an idea Ilya Topuria was going to be out for a little while. First, he said personal life stuff. We all thought that meant maybe a boy's getting a divorce. Now there's this sort of proactive claim that he is being extorted over false domestic violence accusations. I don't know if we've ever seen it go down exactly like this. Usually we see the domestic violence accusations, and then later somebody comes out and claims this is an attempt to extort me.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you see the phrase false allegations of domestic abuse being deployed by the person who is being accused, don't you kind of, I don't want to cast doubt on Ilya Topuria personally, because who knows what the hell is going on, but just given our overall breadth of experience in this sport and in life and in sports in general, when you see someone deploy the phrase, false allegations of domestic abuse, don't you have to have cause to look at that skeptically?
Especially in this world, in the world of fight sports and in the world of MMA, I mean, maybe this is what he feels makes him uniquely susceptible to such claims, is because everything we've heard from various sources about top, not just fighters, let's say top people, important people in this sport, in the UFC, makes it so that you're kind of ready to believe any such accusations.
Yeah.
It wouldn't feel like, what, a UFC guy would do that? Like nobody's saying that. So you, in a way, you'd feel especially bad for him if it is completely not true, if it is just a cash grab, or
Yeah.
if it is just part of a bitter, divorce or custody battle or whatever might be going on there, because people will be ready to believe that about a professional cage fighter. Just
Yeah.
everything we've seen seems to lend itself to that.
The statement is a roller coaster, man, because it starts with the false allegations of domestic abuse. Then Ilya Topuria, you got to admit that Ilya Topuria throughout our time with him has been very savvy, media
Yeah.
wise, et cetera, et cetera. First thing I notice about this statement, no typos or grammatical errors, which sets it vastly apart from most statements we see released in the world of MMA, almost as though he had somebody read it, had someone proofread it, and or had an actual professional person write it for him. It's not like ramblings. It's not screenshots of a rambling post to the notes app on his iPhone. So
Well,
Ilya Topuria, a cut above the rest for starters. But
we also live in the age of AI. So
you
let's
think that
not
Chat GPT wrote this for Ilya
not
Topuria?
necessarily, because Ilya Taporia is the kind of guy where you got a little money laying around, you look like you got some professionals around you, you
Yeah.
could have somebody whip something up for you. That
Yeah.
that part shouldn't be that hard, and it's not like we need to come up with a fucking Dickensian novel here. We just need to come up with a statement that reads clean and makes a good case for him, all that kind of stuff. But also, this is the sad age in which we live in, which everything from commencement speeches to funeral addresses, eulogies, and the "I didn't do it" preemptive domestic violence denial all arouse our suspicions. Did ChatGPT do this?
Yeah. So roller coaster, as I said, you start out with false allegations of domestic abuse and you start thinking, well, were they though? And then you get down here into all relevant evidence has been carefully preserved and documented, including audio recordings, written communications, witness statements, and video material. The evidence has been submitted to the appropriate judicial authorities in order to pursue legal action for attempted extortion, falsification of evidence, misappropriation of funds and personal property, and multiple threats. So you get to that part, and you start thinking, well, maybe Ilya's got receipts. Maybe Ilya's got receipts here.
And in
Then,
fairness, okay, go ahead.
well, you get to this, this third to last paragraph says, many individuals have faced similar situations, and time and again, the legal system has ultimately clarified the facts. That's another part where I'm like, really? Point me out to many individuals.
Yeah.
Point me to the many individuals that the legal
Mhm.
system time and time again has exonerated as
Give me a for instance. Just throw one off the top of your head. Somebody who's been, and not just like exonerated in the John Jones sense, where they agreed to some lesser charge or eventually got the charges dismissed and were like, I've been completely exonerated. I mean, I'm saying like somebody had been like, we found that yes, in fact, somebody did clearly make this up to try to extort you. Like that, I can't think of a whole lot of instances. Maybe it happens more often over there in Europe. Think that could be happening. Maybe it's the Spanish legal system has a whole lot of instances like that they all know about. He's like, I don't even need to list them because everybody knows about the famous case of Alejandro something. And I don't know. Maybe the thing is, it sucks to have this sort of perception aligned against you as a pro fighter and as a pro fighter coming from this sport and even this company, because without him saying this, I certainly hadn't heard anything. There's nothing to suggest that he has done anything like that. It's not like we've seen a ton of his private life, I feel, but what we have seen it hasn't painted him as a Conor McGregor type out of control figure.
Yeah.
So it does, like, there's nothing to suggest that this has happened other than him saying that it hasn't and us being like, we've been around this sport a while.
Yeah. I mean, probably, honestly, good idea for him to get out in front of it before we found out about it from someone else. Because if you did just like start to see the headline, Ilya Topuria accused of domestic violence, whatever, that would set the narrative for you right there. And as you said, working against him would be all of our previous experience in these fields. Also, ain't this just the way? You get a new guy, right? Shiny, looks like he's going to be a big star, gets to the mountaintop, and then, he fucking gets diverticulitis. Something like that, right? Goes absolutely off the rails on his sail around the world to spread awareness for water safety. You know what I mean? It's just like, could one of these people who seems like the next big star just keep it between the lines, man? Just keep it on your side of the road.
Yeah.
This seems like it happens over and over again.
It does. And this one seems, if it were true, if it came out that it were true, that would be especially disappointing, wouldn't it? Because it seemed like we were very ready to get excited about Ilya Taporia. Seemed like he had a lot of the pieces in play, he had that star quality, but he didn't seem outwardly like an asshole. The bar for that is pretty low in this sport. And so, like, basically one of the ways you can keep from appearing like an asshole is for us to just not learn that much about you, which kind of seems like, in a way, that's some of what Ilya Taporia had managed to do. And this at least makes us look a little bit askance, or at least, the best you could say is let's wait and see. And in the meantime of us waiting and seeing, what seems what is not going to be happening is defending the UFC lightweight title, which is just a bummer for the sport.
Yeah. Also, I guess, I hate to say it, but once again, something like this happens, and I'm reminded, like, maybe the UFC was smart, multiple decades ago, when they were like, we're not promoting these fighters. We're promoting the big boss himself, who will be here for the duration. Every once in a while, he's going to get caught slapping his wife on video in a club on New Year's Eve in Mexico. But other than that, right, he'll be here. We have a real solid, dependable guy to make the face of the company. I feel like, as much as that sucks, as much as we complain about it sometimes, to be like, oh, obviously the UFC could be doing a better job promoting its fighters, shit like this happens. And I hate to admit it, but deep down in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, they made the right call there.
Well, I thought you were going to say, like, the UFC has sort of famously failed to adopt any sort of code of conduct.
Well, that too. Not
might
failed,
apply
like
across the board.
Refused to.
Yeah.
Not failed. They did it on purpose. Last thing they want is a code of fucking conduct.
They don't want to be tied up deciding how you have to deal with a thing like this. They want to play it on a case-by-case basis. Here, it seems like Ilya taking himself out of competition, rather than, just trying to post through it, to fight through it, as a lot of people have chosen to do in some of these similar situations. So I don't know, man. It's a bummer all the way around. Even if the legal system does completely exonerate him, and he has text messages from somebody being like, hey, if you don't give me $10 million, I will tell people you hit me, even though we both know you did not. Even if it ends up being, like, completely exonerated, it still means we're going to sit around here for a while trying to act like the winner of Paddy Pimblett and Justin Gaethje is the best lightweight in the world. Is that what we're going to be doing? Because we're going to do that interim title fight. And if you're saying that the interim might be, in fact, be a long time, then we might end up just promoting that guy. We might strip Ilya Taporia, end up promoting somebody to be lightweight champion. And then once again, we will come around to the question of, can it be you, troll boy? Will the UFC will Dana White finally be like, all right, Arman Tsarukyan is sitting up there at the number one contender. How long do you keep punishing him by reaching down past him to grab somebody else to pull up there? Yeah. At a certain point, it just will get too ridiculous, won't it?
Yes, it will. And I guess I feel begrudging to admit that the UFC is probably right to make Dana White the figurehead rather than whoever happens to be the hot fighter at the moment. But when you see quotes from Ilya Taporia talking about how he wants to get into boxing rather than MMA, that's when I start to think, well, you did say it's not a career, it's an opportunity. So maybe there's some guys where you should be trying to make it a career and not necessarily let them come in and then immediately go get their ass
Yeah,
whipped by
wait,
whoever
wait,
the
wait.
best boxer is.
He means it's an opportunity to make what money the UFC is willing to pay you. Not it's an opportunity to go do anything else once you got a UFC contract. We also remember him saying just recently on that MacLife interview where he was talking about Francis Ngannou, where he was like, "Oh, we let him go. I don't have to let anybody go," which getting a little indenture servitude over there. Also getting a little bit, hey, I'm bragging that we did exactly some of the shit that is alleged against us in various antitrust suits. So,
Yeah. You know what? Bringing up antitrust suits might be as good a segue to the year's top headlines as we're going to get here. So maybe we should spend some time talking about that. First, though, Ben, we do have to acknowledge the UFC is on hiatus for a few weeks.
oh yeah, well, we got us one of them hiatus.
Yeah.
Hiatus. I mean,
Mhm.
thank the MMA gods in a way, you
Right.
know.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of people are going to be happy for a little break, but I mean, what are they all going to do with themselves?
You know, I'm glad you asked because there are, in fact, other sports still happening. The NFL,
What?
NBA, NHL, college football, still a lot of stuff to keep a person interested.
Wow. Ugh. If only there was some place we could go to watch it all.
It just so happens I have still more good news for you. There is a place you can still watch sports, probably even a lot of sports at the same time. It's called the Arlington Tap House, and it's located at 140 West Arlington Street out there in Gladstone, Oregon.
I've heard that that is in the Portland metro area.
It is. It is in the Portland metro area. They got all kinds of drinks, food trucks. They show the sports, man. They show the damn sports. Plus, if you show up wearing any variety of CME merchandise, they'll give you your first beer for half off.
Dang, that sounds great. I suppose now all I have to do to find out more is go online to www.140warlington.com. Then I'll head down to 140 West Arlington Street in Gladstone, Oregon.
Portland metro area.
It's amazing. Thanks for the tip, Ben. I really appreciate it.
That's what I'm here for.
Ben, the UFC antitrust lawsuit was officially settled in late 2024, but 2025, early 2025 saw the settlement approved by the judge out there in Nevada, and perhaps more importantly, this year, fighters started to get that sweet, sweet settlement money.
Yeah.
So I feel you start paging through the headlines this year, few of them appear completely positive. But here's one, man. I got to say, you see these guys finally starting to get their checks, warms my heart a little bit.
Yeah, it does, especially because a lot of them, they're getting these checks years and years after the last time they did any fighting from the UFC. I did a story earlier in the year about how various people are feeling about that, especially because, some people were going, some people, it was so long ago that they've just moved on with their lives entirely. And they just think of it as like it's might as well be a completely different life, completely different version of their life. And then, this money shows up that where you're basically like, yay, money, especially because a lot of them didn't do anything except not opt out of the antitrust suit and then sign their name and give them their address or whatever, give them their information when the time came. So they're going, yeah, free money, but it's also money that reminds you like, oh, wait, this is them pretty much admitting that they were exploiting and underpaying us.
Yeah.
And getting away with a lot less than they might have had to write a check for had the thing played out all the way.
You know what? Shout out for the fighters, though, for having what I understand to be a fairly historic percentage of people who actually did sign up to get the money, because this thing went on for so long. I halfway expected, just knowing what I know about my own personal experience trying to wrangle MMA fighters to even get them to call you on the phone at a certain time. I expected this, a lot of guys would be like, wait, what happened? Like 5 years from now, people would be like, wait a second, I could have signed up to get some money. What? Either that, or other guys would be like, no, don't deserve it. I signed the contract. It's my own fault. And yet here we had like a huge 90 some percentage of people who were eligible got signed up to get the money.
I mean, that's not that surprising to me that the latter didn't happen.
You
As
think
much
maybe
as
you're
some
saying some of that
people
is just for show? Some of it is just talk?
as much as some people, maybe even some people who hold ongoing broadcast gigs with the UFC might have been willing to do everything up to and including stabbing the other fighters in the back, showing up to offer testimony in which they will lick the boot just to stay in the good graces. I didn't necessarily think that once checks started to get cut, those same people were going to be like, no, I must stand by my principles on this and refuse the money. That ain't going to happen. They're still going to be like, well, once the UFC has to pay out all that money, it's not like the UFC's amount of the settlement or the payment goes down if you personally don't take it. That just means that other fighters get more. So you might as well go ahead and cash that check. To me, I think that for some of the credit in how high a rate of return they got on guys signing up to get their money here, you got to give a little credit to guys like Tom Lawler, who was very vocal about making sure everybody knew. And he's not the only one. There were several of those fighters who went to great lengths to make sure they got the word out, make sure they let people know, here's the facts of the situation. Here's what you need to do. Here's what you don't need to do. But because it's in their financial best interest to not do that. The
Right.
fewer
They would have got more
people,
money.
yeah, the fewer people who sign up to get the money, the greater share of the settlement each person gets. And yet they were like going out of their way to make sure even some of the more reclusive people were able to be contacted and at least have the chance to say yes or no about it. And that's admirable, I think.
Yeah, and also huge shout out to the fighters who were responsible for the lawsuit itself, because this thing went on for years, So those guys who were really the first people to take a tangible action against the UFC for a thing that we all frankly knew was going on for a long time. And we were kind of always, those of us on the outside looking in, were always like, why do they put up with this? Why
Yeah.
don't fighters do something? And then you had this specific group of people who finally did. And it took a lot of perseverance and work and, standing by their principles to get this thing over the goal line to the extent that it did. So, shout out to those people.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit less sticking to your word. John Jones. We talk a little bit about John Jones this year. Was going to fight Tom Aspinall, then never was, then was retired. Thought everybody knew that. Already told the UFC months ago, living his best life, monetizing this amazing brand that he's built. Now he's back, wants to get on the White House. Now it's the UFC who's saying no. Meanwhile, Tom Aspinall gets poked in the fucking eye by Cyril. It's a mess. It's a fucking mess this year.
Is a dog shit year for heavyweights in the UFC. The heavyweight title picture in the UFC has been in fucking shambles for all of 2025, basically. Let's not forget that at the end of last year, Dana White was telling us, don't worry, we're going to get this done. The John Jones versus Tom Aspinall thing. It seemed like maybe they were going to get it done, even if they needed the help from their money bags friends over in the Middle East to come in, plonk some big bags of Scrooge McDuck ass coins down on the table to get John Jones to agree. Still couldn't get him. Decided to piece up out the game. We announced the retirement of one of the all-time MMA greats in the middle of the fucking night from like Kazakhstan. And then weeks later, maybe John Jones hears that they're going to do a fight card at the White House, and he's just so excited. His love of the federal government is too much. His love of the
freedom.
rich,
Let's just say it.
freedom and democracy is too great. He just has to get on that fight card, and so announces his return, only to then be told, I don't know, bro. Maybe not. And you said it, in between all this, we got like, hey, we're moving on with the heavyweight division. Tom Aspinall, Cyril gone, the heavyweight title fight nobody asked for. And then we can't even get a real conclusion to that. God, what a mess. He
Yeah.
entered thinking, you know what? Even if John Jones is out of the picture, Tom Aspinall looks like he could be the next big heavyweight star. Then, from the eye poke to the way MMA fans inevitably treat you after any sort of hint that you refuse to fight on with a fucking retina hanging off your face, whatever. They love to call people quitters. And Tom Aspinall's attempts to further explain it and like offer doctor's notes somehow only seems to make people more angry at him. And then you end up with a situation where you're like, so we entered the year thinking we might have like two big important heavyweights, and we kind of closed the year with zero
Yeah.
and not a single quality heavyweight title fight seen to its conclusion to show for it all. It's fucking incredible.
I mean, if Merab Dvalishvili and Islam Makhachev are your two standout candidates for fighter of the year, John Jones is my only candidate for non-fighter of the year, worst fighter of the year. Just the guy who sucked the worst in terms of our expectations and what was delivered in 2025.
Also, I'm reminded, Uncrowned, we posted this on the Instagram page recently, and it was a clip of Dana White at the end of last year saying, I got something so fucking crazy for you guys in 2025. You guys aren't going to believe
I saw
it.
that. I saw the clip.
No one's
I
going
saw
to see
the
it
clip.
coming.
And then I was reminded that he did in fact say that. And then it's yet another instance of like when he was going to make it up to the fans in Toronto or whatever. I don't know. At this point, he could probably be like, well, it's the White House. Right? Just that's what let's talk about. It was a White House card.
But that didn't happen in 2025. You announced it in 2025? You can't tell me the thing he was sitting there thinking like, I got something coming that's so crazy you guys won't believe it. And the something so crazy was an announcement of something else that would happen the following year. Nope. No, sir. You do not get to do that. You did not, but that would be, didn't he, when they came up with when people started pressing him on when were you going to make it up to the fans from that fight that was disappointing, and he was like, I did. Remember there was like a free one on Spike TV, and people went, bro, seriously? Seriously?
I mean, you're talking about the same guy who teased us about the future of fighting, and then it turned out to be a warehouse. You know?
It's like if you
turned out to be
an
arena within walking distance of Dana White's office.
It's like if you told your kids, be good, do a good job at the dentist today, and there'll be a special surprise for you afterwards. And then they do it, they come through it, they're like, all right, what's the surprise? And it's like, well, you've been eating dinner every night, haven't you? That's it. You've been putting your feet under that dinner table. You're welcome. Yeah, they're not going for that, man. They're not going to buy it.
It probably wouldn't go over that great. Zuffa Boxing. Do we count that as a 2025 story going after the Ali Act? And obviously, this is one that's going to roll over into next year, but this seems like one of the important happenings to me.
There has not been a single Zuffa Boxing event. So
well, they got t-shirts. They got the t-shirts.
They had the t-shirts a long time ago, Chad.
Yeah. Well, now they got the t-shirts and a lobbying effort, an influential lobbying effort winding its way through the federal government.
Are we going to look back at 2025 in MMA and be like, this is like one of those episodes of like an HBO prestige drama where it's a table setting episode? Sure, not a lot happened, but we're building to the big showdown. You know, we got to set the scene a little bit. We got to move some pieces in place. Even if you look back at the episode and you're like, not much actually technically happened on screen. It was still necessary to get from A to C.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. If it was a table setter, it kind of sucked, to be honest with you.
Yes, it did.
It's kind of shitty. Remember, you're listening to the Co-Main Event podcast proper. This show drops every Tuesday afternoon for free in your timelines and your podcast libraries. But if you want even more of the Co-Main Event, you can find Ben Folks and myself all week over on Patreon. Hit us up at patreon.com/co-main event. Get loads of extra audio and video content, as well as access to our official Discord message board, where they're talking about fights and a lot of other stuff literally all the time. Another way you can support the show is by going to our website, comainevent.com, and checking out the merchandise shop. We got t-shirts, we got hats, we got hoodies, we got lots more. Stop by and pick up the best-selling Daddest Man on the Planet coffee mug or t-shirt while we can keep them in stock. You could also get yourself a Dundasso t-shirt or hoodie, get yourself a Bobby Knuckles t-shirt, get yourself a Volcamania t-shirt. We got it all over there. Just go to our website, comainevent.com, and click the link at the top right-hand corner of the screen that says shop. That'll get you there. As always, we partner with our friend Johnny Ashcroft on the shop. He is a graphic designer from Portland, Oregon. We can't recommend him highly enough for all your design needs. Hit him up at studiosuperconductor.com or on Instagram at Studio Superconductor. Right now, like we always do about this time, let's do a little bit of listener mail.
Listener mail.
First piece of listener mail this week comes to us from Ulrich von Goebel. And I got to be honest, when I heard that name, I was like, 16th century German monarch.
Mm-hmm.
Then I looked it up as a soccer player.
Well,
a footballist.
He might be named after a 16th century German monarch.
The beautiful game. Guy who plays the beautiful game.
Sounds like he doesn't seem like it's impossible that he's related to an important Prussian field general, right?
I kind of imagined a guy in like a brown robe tied with a rope. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought maybe Ulrich von Goebel would look like, but no.
You're talking about you picture like the monk who invented beer or something.
Yeah, exactly. A brewer, a brewing-ass monk, a Trappist.
Okay.
Anyway, Ulrich von Goebel writes, the MMA gods perched on Mount Zion looked down on all the unfettered discourse and decided to grant two distinguished gentlemen 3 wishes, with which they can change 3 things in UFC productions in the Paramount era. What would you wish for?
Well, the first thing I would wish for, I feel almost certain to not only not get, but to in fact get the opposite. And it is do away with the Trump worship and the entire Trump administration worship. It is fucking cringy, bro. Even I would like to think that even in the alternate universe where I wasn't just politically, personally, and as a matter of taste disgusted by the entire Trump administration, everything they're trying to do. Even if I was somewhere between neutral and mildly supportive, I would still be able to look at it and be like, what is this? What kind of North Korea dear leader ass shit is this, bro? That's fucking weird. It's weird to like give the president of the United States his own walkout at your events. It's weird to have a dedicated camera on him. It's weird to keep cutting to him all the time. It's weird to have the announcers talking about him all the time as if like the emperor is here at this one and therefore it is making the gladiators nervous and we must discuss it at all times. It's so bizarre. And that would be bizarre enough if we weren't also being like, and then there's the FBI director and like shit, like, you're just out there with just some like agriculture secretary and you're trying to treat them all like they're fucking the entourage of, Kiss or something. It's so weird. And I would just be like, we don't ever need to do that again. If whatever trying to like points you were trying to score, trying to get on the good graces so that we can call up and say things like, hey, make sure that we don't have any antitrust problems, or make sure that this Chechen fighter can get a visa. It seems like you got all that you want. You don't need to keep doing it. Please.
I'm shutting down the Apex. Maybe I'm not shutting it down, but we would be there less often. It would be less the future of fighting. And if we were going to be there, put some more people in there, man.
Yeah.
We talked about this at the time. WWE already showed you can do that. You can put more people in there. You can make it look like a small but actual arena and less like a warehouse with a couple of guys sitting in lazy boys watching the fights.
Yeah, I mean, that is one thing where once we saw it was possible, once the WWE showed us that you could do it a different way, then I think you could get away with doing the Apex and not having it feel quite as afterthoughty if you just put more people in there. Like, remember when they used to do the Ultimate Fighter finales at the Pearl at the Palms? That's not a big theater. That's a small venue, and still, you tell the difference if it's 2,000 people as opposed to 15, 18,000. But still, it didn't feel like you were just doing it in a warehouse somewhere. It felt like an actual venue. You could make the Apex feel like that if you wanted to, and it just doesn't seem like there's enough interest in that.
What else? You got 2 more wishes left if you got
Jesus
more stuff.
Okay, here's a small one, but one that I do think baffles me whenever it doesn't happen. If we're showing a fight on TV, which is all the fights basically, and we're going to act like it's important enough for people to want to watch it on TV at some kind of subscription tier, whether it's the bottom tier or the top tier, and we were doing the thing where we're cutting to a guy's corner between rounds, and they're speaking a different language in the corner, can we do the research ahead of time to find out what language it is they're going to be speaking and have somebody on hand to tell us what it is they're saying? Because you'll notice, especially with some of the lesser, less important fights and less popular in the UFC languages, sometimes they'll cut over there. People will be speaking a different language and they'll just be like, I don't know, they seem worked up. They seem fired up in that corner. No idea what they're saying. I don't know. Well, that kind of, or like when we just get like whatever friend of the guys in his corner, or sometimes his manager to be the interpreter in the post-fight interview or something. Let's go ahead and take the extra little step to tell us what the fuck they are saying.
I'm saying, let's make the color commentators learn the rules.
Never. You can't force that knowledge into their heads. It won't stay
These are
put.
my wishes. These are my wishes, my magical wishes. I'm wishing magically that the color commentators on the UFC knew the rules and how they are enforced.
They do try to do a thing sometimes like the NFL does on like NFL broadcasts, where we go to like the rules expert, and we'll use Mark Ratner in a situation like that sometimes. The problem is we sometimes don't go to him until 3 contradictory things have already been said on the broadcast, confusing and muddying the waters. So maybe we could, if we aren't 100% certain that we're right about what we're saying, we throw it to Mark. Let Mark weigh in, or somebody.
I don't want to say anything controversial.
Please do, though.
But I'm just saying, final wish, maybe less Buffer, more Joe Martinez.
Okay.
Just saying, magically, my magical wish.
Do you think it would help Joe Martinez's case if he would come out there sometimes in a sport coat that looks like, an old TV when they'd go off the air? Does he need to have some of these, it's like a look every once in a while that's like, these are the curtains from a vampire bordello, and somebody tore it down off the wall, draped it on him?
No, that's one of the reasons for the magical wish. Yeah, it's one of the reasons for the magical wish is we get a guy up there who just, all he did was go to Men's Warehouse and it was fine. It was fine. Best quality of a suit for a ring announcer is that nobody notices it is there.
Okay. There's something to that. I don't know if you've noticed, Buffer has never once been interested in blended into the background, my man. He's pretty sure he's one of the most important people in this sport.
That's true.
He's going to act accordingly. So
you got anything else? You got one wish left. You got one wish in your back pocket. Get a wish for more wishes?
You know what? How about this? Especially if we're going into the Paramount era, when we do these overseas events, let's do them, at least some of them, at least more of them, in the local time zone. Let's do it where it's prime time for them. Let them enjoy Saturday night fight night. If that means we got to watch one late Saturday morning, a Saturday afternoon, that's fine. I think that's totally fine. I like those as a change of pace every now and then. And if you're not worried about selling pay-per-views, then shit, why not?
Next question this week comes to us from Frank Rocky Fiegel. I had to look this up, but Frank Rocky Fiegel, Ben, is potentially the real life inspiration for Popeye the Sailor Man.
Oh, okay. That sounds like
Yeah,
a Wikipedia rabbit hole I want to fall down.
you definitely should. Hello there,
This tab
co-maniacs.
open for later.
He writes, I heard you talking out loud about how you hope the Paramount app works better than the ESPN app. Well, let me tell you something, brother. It doesn't. At least 1 out of 3 times I try and watch something on it, basically only South Park, it just buffers forever and says optimizing playback. It will never actually optimize, though, no matter how long I leave it. A quick search on the Google shows this is a very common problem. This will continue all day for me, but then the next day when I try to watch, it will work. It will still take forever to buffer and frequently drop to blurry, low quality, but it will at least play. All I'm trying to say is don't get your hopes up for a better viewing experience with Paramount. But to be honest, if you did, would you even really feel like you were watching the UFC at this point?
Oh my God, have you looked up a picture of the real life Frank Rocky Fiegel?
Yeah, I did. That's why I told you about it.
It looks exactly like Pop. I thought it was going to be like a little bit of a stretch to get there. No, I've never seen a man look more like a cartoon character in my entire fucking life.
Yeah, it's Popeye right there.
That's incredible. Okay, I have limited experience with the Paramount app, I gotta admit. I've watched South Park on it as this season, especially when they really kicked in the door early on. I was like, okay, I gotta see this. I tried to watch Tulsa King
You
until
did.
I got so distracted by how fucking weird Sylvester Stallone looks these days. Just all HGH'd and plastic surgery and Botoxed out. I couldn't make it very. Plus, man, this man's like fucking 75 years old, and you want me to imagine him out there just like constantly smacking people around as like a Tulsa mob boss? Come on, I can't do it. But I watched a couple of things on there. I don't know. It seemed to work. I don't know. I've watched any live sports. Sometimes that gives people more problems than other stuff. I don't really know, man. Do you have much experience with it?
I don't have any experience with it.
Never
I gotta
watched a
wait.
single thing on there.
I gotta wait for the FCS playoffs to get over, and then I'm canceling my ESPN Plus subscription, and we're moving to Paramount.
I mean, I canceled mine. I canceled my ESPN Plus this week.
Yeah, I
And
saw you tweeted about it. You seemed
yeah,
like you were excited.
I was pretty excited. Because of like the billing cycle, I still got it until almost the end of the month.
Well, that's true. Could do that. Yeah.
You got basically one more game we care about coming up in the FCS playoffs, and then it's going to be national championship game in January. So
yeah, and the game we care about is on ABC, so I probably don't even need to have it. But yeah, I'd like to keep tabs on what's going on with Villanova and Illinois State also.
Okay, now I'm realizing as I'm looking at a list of Paramount Plus TV shows that to the extent I have seen any of them, it's mostly on airplanes. And you know what? I'll say this. It worked. It worked on the airplanes. I saw a little bit of Yellowstone, not because I chose it, but because my TV wasn't working and I could see right between the seats of the in front of me to the TV, and the guy in the middle seat in front of me, he just binged Yellowstone. And I was like, let's see what it's all about. No sound, no context, nothing. I was like, they seem to imagine there being a lot more gunplay in Montana ranch life than there is. And then I saw Landman.
Okay.
I saw like 5-6 episodes of Landman on a plane once with Billy Bob Thornton as a oil guy. This is not bad. It's not terrible. It's better than Tulsa King.
Well, you watched 5 or 6 episodes of it. That's got something. That says something for it. My question is, will the Paramount app let me log in? Because if it will do that, it already has like it is ahead by a nose of the ESPN Plus app because sometimes I gotta try every device before I find one of them where I'm already logged into ESPN Plus and it doesn't make me continually try to log in and always say, "You're almost there, dude. You just got to sign up for a plan. You're almost there." It's like, motherfucker, I have a plan. I am literally one of your customers. Who knows how many times over at this point?
I mean,
So
the bar is pretty low for what we consider a success for something like this at this point, right? Like, it needs to just fucking work for one thing. Also, the thing ESPN Plus would do would be like every once in a while just freeze in the middle of a fight, especially middle of a pay-per-view that I paid you $80 to watch, and the shit was just freeze in the middle of a fight. And you see people posting stuff where it just be like the picture froze, stayed like that for 10-20 seconds, and then when I finally got it unfroze, somebody was walking around with their hands up while the crowd cheered, and I went, motherfucker. So it needs to not do that. It needs to be able to show live sports, which we're not in. Like, I remember trying to like stream stuff from the UFC website in like 2009, and it didn't work for shit for even a second. So we're not that. It's like 2025, about to be 2026. Just work and being able to do live sports, especially when it's not like you're doing the NFL where you got 25 million people or whatever watching. Like, you ought to be able to manage that. It'd be nice if it had a decent search function, but I'm not holding my breath on that. I won't even consider that necessarily a thing you have to have for success. It would be nice to have that. You managed to hit some of those points, and I feel like we'll all go, this is an improvement.
I mean, if you just did this multi-billion-dollar merger and you're out here trying to buy HBO and shit, just make the fucking app work, man.
No, they can't. They spend all their money buying shit.
Make the app work. Next question this week comes to us from Dan Alexander, who writes in to say, as Christmas is upon us and things start to slow, I recently sat down and watched Tom Hardy in Havoc. It's a switch your brain off and enjoy the violent ride type of film. Hardy and Timothy Oliphant are superb. I don't have a hard time believing that. At first, I couldn't place the face, but then I realized that Michelle Karate Hottie Watterson had a role. She doesn't utter a single word, but my God, is she far removed from the sweetheart we've all grown to love. Menacing, brooding, and genuinely lethal. She has a real presence on screen and is involved in its best scenes. So it got me thinking, which current or former MMA fighter do you think has covered themselves in glory, pardon the pun, on the silver screen or TV? Please discourse, and Santa told me confidently that you are both loved equally. Wishing you guys and the CME universe a great Christmas. Tree emoji. Thanks, Dan.
Okay, first of all, IMDb tells me that Havoc is a movie about after a drug deal gone wrong, a bruised detective must fight his way through the criminal underworld to rescue a politician's estranged son, unraveling a deep web of corruption and conspiracy that ensnares his entire city.
Isn't that the plot of Bad Dudes, the Nintendo game?
I couldn't tell you what the plot of Bad Dudes, the Nintendo game is. I'm sorry.
I think I might have watched the beginning of Havoc on Netflix, but maybe only made it a few minutes before I decided I wasn't in the mood for it.
Forrest Whitaker's in it. Ghost Dog.
Oh, okay.
Ghost Dog himself. And that when you say this about Michelle Watterson, I could see that. I could see how if she just made a face and didn't talk to where the point where you realize, oh, she's actually a sweetheart. If she just like glowered, you would be convinced. You'd be like, you'd be like, oh yeah, no, she's scary. And also, if you made sure not to show her standing next to any regular sized people, if she stands next to, like a just a normal average height person, you're gonna be like, oh, she's tiny.
The same is true of fucking Tom Cruise. We've been doing that shit for years.
Same is true of Ilya Taporia if you put him in a thing. I mean, you need to not, and I'll tell you what, if you're gonna go and do like action movie fighting, maybe there's a place where Michelle Watterson's skill at beating the shit out of the 6 inches in front of a person's face is actually very useful.
Come on. You
I'm not wrong. You
You
know,
need to
I
lay
like
off.
Michelle Watterson. Michelle Watterson is a great person, super nice person, everything. She would do that though. She would do that, and you know that's true. You know it.
They had a little buddy from the Bear play Kerry Von Erich in the Iron Claw.
Oh yeah. Well, see,
The
but
guy
that
from
was
the
a little distracting for me, honestly.
Just get him an orange crate to stand on, something like that. The the plot of Bad Dudes, by the way, the game is set in Washington D.C., United States, where President Ronnie, based on 40th President Ronald Reagan, has been abducted by the evil dragon Ninja. The game begins with the following introduction. Rampant ninja-related crimes these days. White House is not the exception.
Rampant ninja-related crimes. Okay. That's a world I want to hear more about for sure.
A Secret Service agent speaks to the titular Bad Dudes, a tough and heroic duo of street-smart brawlers named Blade and Stryker. President Ronnie has been kidnapped by the ninjas. Are you bad enough dudes to rescue Ronnie? So not exactly the same plot as Havoc, but pretty close. Pretty close.
I'll say this, as somebody who has gotten really into the Hollow Knight and Silk Song games, along with my youngest, who's gotten super into them, and I've learned all about the lore and will participate and play in them sometimes. What we expect and ask of a plot of video games has really come a long way. Because they're creating just rich narratives and very complex worlds that slowly unravel over time. It's not like where there would be one little scene, pixelated scene of like two guys walking into an office and somebody says, "Are you bad enough, dudes?" And you go, "Yeah, yeah, I think we are. Let's go. Let's get it." And then it's just you walking left to right across the screen trying to prove you're a bad enough dude over and over again.
MMA actors is what this question was about before we got sidetracked into character defamation against Michelle Watterson and discussion of the plot of Bad Dudes.
George St. Pierre was pretty good of what they asked him to do in that Captain America movie.
Yeah. I always say the guy who has at times made a nice acting career for himself is Keith Jardine.
Yeah.
Although he's not a person that you would immediately think of. He's you see him and stuff, and you're like, oh, there's the Dean of Mean.
Didn't he just make a movie too? Like he's
really
got
did.
a career off the ground in movies. So
there was a hot minute where they were letting Don Fry be in movies.
Yeah.
And then, maybe that went the way of most stuff that Don Fry gets himself involved in.
Yeah. I think maybe it's Keith Jardine, honestly.
We got this one from John Jock Itch Fitch, who writes, you boys got a few weeks off after the next event. Let's go back to the days of Condom Depot on fighters' butts, dragging giant crosses into the ring, chokes lasting too long, and the Gracie Killer. What are some of your favorite matches or moments from the early days of the UFC and Pride? Did Matt Hughes' brother weigh in for him? Did Rashad Evans and Seth Petrozelli really eat a fly during Tough 2? There are lots of interesting topics from the golden age I would like to hear you guys discuss. Enjoying the show. Thanks for making my chores a little less tedious. Now, honestly, one of the true joys of watching the UFC when it first debuted, I'm going to say for the first decade, maybe longer, was that some hilarious, unintentional, unprofessional shit would happen on almost every broadcast. The dude, Superfoot Wallace, burps in the first. He's saying, "Welcome to the Ultimate Fighting Champion." He gets the name wrong also, I think. First line ever spoken on the UFC, and the guy burps right in the middle of it. That was the start. That was the kickoff.
Yeah, and over those years, like there was really a range of shit show ass stuff going on. Dennis Hallman coming out in the Speedo, that's got to be one. That's got to be up there, especially because that came at a time where the UFC it didn't have a good enough excuse for letting stuff slide past them that way. Like it was, they had somebody whose entire job was to make everybody check their their sponsor logos, so we make sure everybody has approved sponsors, all that stuff. They were doing all that stuff, and still Dennis Hallman managed to go out there and wear a Speedo with like training mask on it or whatever. God bless him. You know, don't fear me, fear the consequences.
Paul Buentello with one of the most unfortunate catchphrases of all time, then shows up, wins a fight, says the first half of it on the mic like he expects, like he's The Rock, and he expects the rest of the crowd to say, smells what I'm cooking or whatever, and it's crickets.
Yeah.
After he says that.
Not a single person in that building knew what the fuck he was talking about.
I mean, you could just say everything involving Elite XC. Every moment from start to finish.
That almost feels
Elite
unfair to reach all the way to Elite XC. I'll say this. One thing that always gets me when I see like an old UFC fight shown on like a TV in a bar somewhere or something, and you're watching it, and they go to the post-fight interview. For one thing, Joe Rogan with hair. For the other thing, Joe Rogan, for years, he would be out there. He'd be doing these post-fight interviews in the cage, and you could see his wallet chain.
Yeah. Yes.
He had a wallet chain. Like, are you scared somebody is pickpocketing you while you're doing the UFC commentary duties? Or are you just like that convinced that, yeah, this is the most awesome fashion accessory a man can sport in the year like 2008 or whatever? You'd see him with that wallet chain every time I see it. I laugh now. Just man was on fucking TV interviewing professional athletes with his wallet chain.
I was at the UFC as a fan when Wes Sims got disqualified for stomping on Frank Mir's face. And I went to the post-fight party, and this is back in the day where like fighters would actually show up to the like the UFC post-fight party at whatever weird Hard Rock Cafe it was at or whatever. And I talked to Wes Sims and Wes Sims's dad a little bit during that party, and they were both just befuddled and incensed that it was illegal to stomp on a guy's face in the UFC. Just like they couldn't. It's like they were just hearing about this for the first time.
They thought
this wasn't that long ago. Yeah. Just couldn't believe it. Couldn't stomp on a guy's face. Let's see. Do we got any more here? Jason Webb wrote in to say, I've been moving away from the sport for 6 years because frankly, the violence isn't really my jam anymore, but the fusion of MAGA with the UFC got me not watching much anymore at all. I appreciate you guys addressing the actual elephant in the room. The ice commercial was the last straw for me, but I will continue to listen to the podcast because frankly, I love the athletes and root for them to someday get a bigger slice of the pie and then go Grizz. Thank you, Jason. I'm just going to say we hear this a lot. We hear this a lot. In a way, we hear it enough that it has to be a significant factor in UFC viewership at this point. Also, shout out to the people who are still listening to the podcast, even though they don't watch MMA anymore, even though that is not a sustainable business model for us.
It is a little worrisome for us personally. And by all means, those people should reach out and be like, hey, please talk more about 80s and 90s video games you vaguely remember and have to look up on the internet, or in fact, more about the inspiration for the Popeye character, Polish-born Frank Rocky Fiegel, a tough laborer from Chester, Illinois, who was always getting in fights. It was believed he could have been a professional boxer, Chad, so there's our crossover tie-in. However, he also gave out candy and treats to children, including E.C. Seeger, who remembered Fiegel when he created Popeye. So, just something to think about. Also, they claim that he did indeed love spinach, which is a weird detail. The thing is, I saw Ant Evans making this point in between his just at this point pathological Francis Ngannou bashing on X sometime during the past week, where he was talking about how the UFC now, like, it's way more profitable than it's ever been, but it certainly does not feel as popular as it once was. It doesn't feel as hot, as growing, as like urgent as it did. Some of that, I think, all the things we've talked about over the years, the oversaturation, the just like erecting numerous different paywalls and trying to shake every last penny out of what fans you do have instead of thinking about expanding it and trying to gain more fans. The at times just tilting at windmills strategy about anti-piracy, which meant you accomplished nothing in terms of stopping people from pirating your pay-per-views, but did somehow manage to stop people from like making their own cool YouTube highlights that would get people excited about your shit for free. All that kind of stuff I think contributed. I also wonder, and of course, like the hard right-wing bent now, and a hard right-wing bent toward objectively, when you look at poll data, one of the most unpopular presidents in US history. So that's going to turn some people off inevitably, especially when you go hard after that shit. I also wonder, is something about MMA, the nature of this sport, the kind of the renegade feel of it, do you lose some of that when you become this gargantuan sort of mainstream thing that just seems like another money machine for already rich guys? Like, does it not feel as cool when it's just like, oh yeah, the UFC is one thing around, especially when it gets associated? I think there's a lot of different things that sort of create this like connotation where you hear somebody's like, oh yeah, this guy's a big UFC fan, and you picture a guy, you picture some incel ass dude listening to Joe Rogan and complaining about how women these days is all bitches on the internet. You don't picture a cool guy, you know? Like that's like, it just seems like that's the place in the culture that it has moved toward to occupy, and that doesn't seem like a super like cool, or certainly not an underground thing the way it used to be. Like it used to feel like a sort of a counterculture thing to be into, and now it just definitely does not feel like that.
Yeah, I think all of that is true. Uh, to me, and I've said this before, I feel like at some point, and I would say it was probably when the UFC moved off Spike and moved on to Fox Sports, the business model shifted kind of slowly but surely, and in a way that I feel like a lot of people either didn't notice or don't often put words to. We talk a lot about oversaturation in terms of just having too many UFC events and what that did to the roster and the ability to build stars and keep a coherent narrative in and out of all of these different weight classes. But another thing that it did to me was that it changed the whole focus of the business away from putting on cool fights, which was the whole business philosophy that made the UFC a crossover mainstream success when they were on Spike, and getting the Ultimate Fighter. Like the whole thing was geared around. They used to say it. They used to say, "Hey, man, the difference between us and boxing is that we make the fights that people want to see." And to a certain extent, they still do, right? They'll still put cool fights on pay-per-view when it fits in their budget. Right. When it doesn't fit in their budget, like Francis Ngannou versus John Jones, and it's hard. No, we're not even going to try to make that fight. What it used to be, the whole card was cool fights that you wanted to see.
Yeah.
Like that's how it was. And then once they went to Fox and they were making their money by providing a certain number of content hours, a certain number of events to Fox, the business went in a different direction. They moved from essentially being a fight promotion company to being a content creator, which is just another way that the whole thing has become more sanitized and changed and corporatized by its march to mainstream acceptance, which is not a thing that I foresaw, frankly. When we thought the UFC was going to be a mainstream success, somehow we all imagined that would be cool. And instead, it turns out that it's cool for the guys who own the UFC and not that cool for everyone else.
Yeah. And that is the thing. I mean, we had pinpointed a moment in time when I think during one of his interviews, Lorenzo Fertitta sort of said the quiet part out loud and essentially said, we have learned that we can make less money, or we can make more money with a more watered down product. And so we are going to do that, and we're going to ramp that up, in fact. And that is kind of what happened. They made more and more money every fucking year, and also the product got a little less cool every single year. So, yeah, I mean, I hope people stick with us. Just maybe this, you don't even need to watch it. We'll tell you what the important shit is. We'll make some jokes. Maybe you'll get it through context. Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll just stick around to hear about how, in the debut storyline, Popeye's strength and endurance stemmed from the luck he acquired by rubbing the feathers of the head of Bernice, a wiffle hen, thus enabling him to survive 15 gunshot wounds. I'll tell you what, man, comic strips were different in the 20s. We had characters out here getting shot like 50 Cent and living to tell the tale. By the end of 1929, however, Popeye's strength had become a regular fixture of his character, with spinach by 1932 becoming the primary repository of his prowess. Man, somebody showed out on this Wikipedia page.
Yeah. Big spinach got to Popeye. The next thing you know, spinach. That's what's behind his powers. That's where we're going to leave you this year. What will 2026 bring? We bet the UFC will make more money than ever. Will the product get any cooler? We'll be here to find out. That's a cliffhanger for the end of the year. That's a teaser for 2026. Only one way to find out. Join us.
I simply cannot allow us to get out of here before I tell you about this email I received from a dude who sends me various betting emails. This one,
Okay.
the subject line is 50 plus crazy props for Joshua Paul fight. And Chad, these are some crazy props because you can bet on what the walkout songs will be. You can bet on which of them will have the longer walkout, minus 200 odds on Jake Paul there. You can bet on which of these two words will be said first during the fight, and the two words are rigged and scripted. You can bet on who will be shown first, Shaquille O'Neal or Dwayne Wade.
These are bets that you can make. We
bets.
wonder why it seems like the bets get fixed. Every one of these bets seems like you could pretty easily fix it if you had a man on the inside.
Which fighter will be the first to bleed? I think you know which way that one's going. Not only can you bet on that, you can bet on which part of which fighter will bleed first. If you think there will be blood coming from the mouth or lip of Jake Paul, you can get plus 200 odds on that. If he were to somehow get cut from the neck or below, you're looking at plus 1,200, which... Is that a bet on Anthony Joshua to stab him? I do not know.
What are the odds on who's going to bleed first?
Well, Jake Paul minus 250, Anthony Joshua plus 170.
Okay. All right. That's going to do it. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll talk to you guys in a week or so. We appreciate the support. Join us over on Patreon, patreon.com/co-main event. We'd love it if you would. As for right now, though, we are done. We are through. We are out.
Now, here's one of the questions it seems that people faced at a certain point was, is it better for Popeye's spinach-derived strength to be permanent, that he always walks around with it because he stays eating that spinach? Or is it better if it is like a, sort of a magic mushroom type thing where if he hasn't eaten that spinach, he's a nobody. He's a wimp. He'll get pushed around. He needs to get a can of that spinach in him to get a short-term boost of strength and endurance.
I mean, from a narrative standpoint, that seems better, right? If Popeye is just strong all the time, like what's the point?
It does, though, create the question in the thinking viewer's mind, motherfucker, why don't you wake up with spinach every morning? Why do you even go through a day without, especially in this rough and tumble world of yours? Why are you not constantly eating that spinach, bro?
Gas.
Well, okay. I guess
Can you imagine what it would do to your digestive system? Just constantly ate spinach?
I don't know if anybody would have the balls to say anything about your digestive system if you whip an ass.
Fair point.